Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of sarcasm and humor. But if anybody here believes that these two should not be together, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Actually, Liam, I don't really understand sarcasm or humour, so I don't tend to get a lot of the jokes in this series, and I take everything you say literally.
Then why do you watch? By the way, it's my first video of 2021, so happy 2021, everyone! Let's hope it's better than last year. Oh. Can't be much worse, can it? Anyway, we start off with a simple question. Why does Brock carry the egg in his bloody arms? That's just asking for it to be dropped and smashed. Brock, mate, you have a backpack that is shown to have the same mechanics as Mary Poppins' bloody handbag. Why not just wrap the egg in a sleeping bag and stuff it in there? The gang stumble across a missing child poster, and the kid in the poster kinda looks like Team Rocket's James if he were a child. Now, from the looks of it, James must have aged about 5 to 10 years since this photo was taken, so what's the point of having this outdated photo up? Like, not to be insensitive, but how many years after a kid goes missing in a world filled with monsters that can breathe fire and can control electricity does this sign become pointless? I absolutely hate the way Ash says the title card of this episode.
Holy Matrimony!
When it's clearly meant to be a play on the term holy matrimony, which means marriage, but also an exclamation like holy cow or holy rusted metal, Batman. So surely it should be holy matrimony. The worst part of this is I can hear people being like, what do you mean? I don't hear a difference. So this posh twat turns up, and instead of just talking to Ash and Go, who are mere feet away from him, he shouts into this megaphone, which somehow makes his voice quieter than Ash's. How does that work? Mate, don't you wish you had the kind of money where you could waste it on stuff that don't even work? So the bloke asks Ash and Co, have they seen the boy in the photo? And Ash says, well, we have if it's James from Team Rocket. And then suddenly the bloke just grabs them, stuffs them into his limo, and drives them off towards the estate. The thing is, they said they'd seen James. They didn't say they knew how to find him. Jesse tells James the kid in the photo on the missing poster looks like him, to which James responds saying the kid looks pathetic. Meowth then butts in with,
that's what she means, James.
And if that just wasn't the sickest burn of 1999, I don't know what is.
Well, actually, Liam, didn't this episode first air in 1998?
Not with the burn dubbed in English, it didn't. Oh look, another shockingly huge mansion in the middle of nowhere. How did I never realize this was such a big trope in the Pokémon anime? Almost every other episode takes place in a giant mansion in the middle of nowhere. Also, that smaller mansion there is apparently the dog house for Growlithe, which is the rich kid's favorite Pokemon. Look, right, I love my dogs very, very much. I love both of them so much, and if I had a big enough house, they'd probably each have their own bedroom, maybe a playroom, something like that, but not a whole bloody mansion. By all means, they can free roam the entire house, but they're not getting their own bloody building. It turns out James's parents are dead. Freshly dead. As of this morning. Their coffins are in the foyer and everything. Well, this episode's certainly taken a dark turn, hasn't it? But on the plus side, James will now be rolling in inheritance money, and isn't that really what matters? The butler says that after James ran away, his parents just didn't have the strength to go on, which gives the game away that they're not actually dead. Like, think about it. He's clearly been gone away from this estate for a very long time because he's aged considerably. He's like double the age he was in the missing photo. But his parents only died of broken hearts this morning? Bollocks. This butler is a rubbish liar. Pass it on. James refuses to go to his parents' funeral and feigns amnesia, claiming he's all confused and he only remembers dropping out of Pokemon Tech and then joining a bike gang. And to be honest, I don't blame him. Team Rocket's backstories are a mess, and they only get worse as time goes on. James recalls a memory of himself as a boy, running away from home with his pet Growlithe and dying, even though he's alive to tell the tale. What was he even hoping to achieve with this story? Were Jesse and Meowth supposed to be like, oh yeah, he's dead, guess we'll leave, or what? Since James isn't allowed to claim his inheritance unless he marries someone in the next 24 hours, Jesse suggests just faking a wedding and running off once they've got the money, which James says is ridiculous. How is that ridiculous, mate? Your MO in Team Rocket the whole time has been to make as much money as possible. possible. And now you have an opportunity to be rich beyond your wildest dreams, and all you have to do is fake a wedding that will be planned out for you and it'll be done within 24 hours. Once you've got the money, you can leave and go and get a quick annulment or whatever, and then Bob's your uncle. You're rich, your friends are rich, and you won't have to spend the rest of your days following around 10-year-olds and trying to steal their pets. God, when you say it like that, Team Rocket's daily life's a bit creepy, isn't it? Jessie and Meowth change into invisible costumes so they can essentially use James as a puppet without being seen, but is that even a thing? Jessie's literally just dressed like she's going to a funeral. How is the butler not like, yo James, who's that girl in black behind you? Especially since Jessie looks like someone that the butler knows, which we'll get to in a moment. Once Team Rocket enter the mansion, it's revealed that James's mum and dad faked their own deaths in order to get their son to come home. First of all, what a pair of sociopaths! Had James actually cared about his parents, he would have come home a broken person filled with regrets, and then the reveal that they're not actually dead and it was all fake would have driven the man insane. Secondly, why would they reveal that they're alive right now? Surely they should have had the butler coerce James into getting married in the space of a day, and then only reveal that they're actually alive once all the paperwork is signed. Revealing all of this to James early means he knows they're trying to manipulate him, and therefore now he has an extra reason to resist all this. The moral of this story is, if you're gonna fuck with people's emotions to try and manipulate them, make sure you get what you want out of them first. Quick note, I was going to mention how weird it was that James didn't even seem slightly sad upon hearing the news that his parents had passed away. But the fact that in this scene James says this is just the kind of stunt they'd try and pull to get him to come home means he knew it was bull from the start. And that's why I didn't bring it up. James's parents tell Hopkins, the butler, to begin preparations, and he picks up James and Jessie and Meowth, revealing that he knew that Jessie and Meowth were there all along, he just ignored them. What a rude butler. He should be sacked. Hopkins, along with James's parents, rush Team Rocket upstairs to begin preparations, leaving Ash and Co downstairs in the foyer. My question is, why do Ash and Co stick around? They could quite happily just leave and carry on their adventure, knowing that Team Rocket aren't going to be a problem for at least 24 hours. But of course they don't. Instead, our protagonists sneak upstairs and eavesdrop on this private family matter. That's not very protagonisty. Direct quote from James's father.
A man who can't settle down is like a bumblebee without a nose.
Mate, this is the Pokemon world? What the hell's a bumblebee? It's revealed that the girl that James's parents expect James to marry is there with them, a girl called Jessebell. James's mother tells Jessebell it will be her duty to transform James from a worthless do-nothing to a respectable gentleman. Jessebell responds,
As you wish, mother.
Wait, mother? But that's James's mother. If she's Jessebell's mother too,
Jessebell was calling James's mum mother because she's going to be Jessebell's future mother-in-law? Or maybe Mother is just the character's name?
Stop right there, mate. You are reaching right now. All I know is James's parents want him to marry his own sister. That's grim. Oh look, Jessebell looks just like Jessie. Now what's weird here is neither James's parents nor Hopkins, who if you remember literally picked up Jessie and carried her upstairs, made any comment about the fact that Jessie looks like Jessebell. Thing is, even if you were pretending not to notice someone, if you came across someone who looked exactly like someone you know, who was in the same building as you, mere rooms away, you would say something. You'd want to stand them side by side and compare, wouldn't you? I'm just saying, it's weird that everyone's shocked that Jessebell looks like Jessie, but nobody gives a toss that Jessie looks like Jessebell. Apparently Jessebell can't see Jessie or Meowth here and asks why James is talking to himself. I want to believe that she's pretending not to see them, but surely if she knows that Jessie and Meowth are clearly trying to push James into going through with the wedding, which is what Jessebell herself wants, why would she then make herself out to be dumb as soup? As Jessebell and definitely just James are making their way down to the basement, Ash and Co are still following. But of course they're keeping their distance because they don't want to be caught sticking their nosy beaks in where they don't belong. This is still not very protagonisty. Jessebell leads them to a room that turns out to be the mansion's dungeon. Not being funny, but if you have to lead a person to a literal dungeon in order to convince them to marry you, are you sure that you two are really that compatible? James's father finally reveals that they could see Jessie and Meowth the whole time. We know, Hopkins literally picked them up in front of you. This really highlights how dumb Jessie and Meowth are. How do you get lifted off the ground by a person and then still think you haven't been spotted? Jessie throws a smoke bomb on the floor so she and Meowth can escape, leaving James behind. What great friends. Also, this makes those two even stupider because they're leaving James behind, which means James will probably be angry with them and therefore probably won't share his inheritance with them. You're literally running from money, you pair of pillocks. Jessebell tries to stop James from running away by repeatedly cracking a huge whip at him. Listen, love, unless you're hoping that James has some real dark kinks, you should probably cut that shit out. Big ass bull whips like that can cut a person really deep, and slicing a person open isn't usually something people appreciate at a wedding. I tell you what people do appreciate, and that's G Fuel! Code ACE will get you 30% off G Fuel until the 4th of January. Ain't I good to you? Today I'm drinking rainbow sherbet. It is a top tier flavor. Definitely recommend it if you've not tried it. Thank you to all the people that used code ACE throughout 2020. You helped the channel out so much more than you'll ever know. Here's to another year of lovely discounts on G Fuel with code ACE. James's parents sit back and sip tea while James desperately runs from the woman trying to whip him into submission and act like they're a perfect match, while sitting under a parasol inside a basement dungeon. I think if James gets out alive, he could have grounds to get these two sectioned, which would probably put him in control of their money. That's probably an easier path to wealth than this marriage fiasco. Direct quote from Brock.
I don't like to get involved in family squabbles.
No, but you do enjoy watching them without anyone noticing from behind a bunch of crates, don't you? These three are the least protagonisty protagonists. Pass it on. I'm surprised I need to say this, but for anyone not familiar with human relationships, if you need to have a Vileplume use Stun Spore on your crush to stop them from escaping you, chances are you two just aren't meant to be. You shouldn't be pursuing any kind of romantic relationship without consent from the other party, and needing to use Stun Spore is definitely a sign that the other party does not consent. Direct quote from Jessebell.
I'll make a gentleman out of you yet, even if it destroys us.
What a stupid thing to say. If it ends up destroying you, then what's the point? After being discovered and thrown out of the mansion by Hopkins, Ash and Co can hear Growly, James's Growlithe, trying to bash its way out of its doghouse, but it's locked. So naturally they all grab the doors and pull as hard as they can while Growly bashes the other side until they spring open. Can you really unlock doors like that just by pulling them enough? To be honest, that's a big security issue. Like, you'd think a family with enough money to have a second mansion purely for what is essentially a dog could at least invest in some deadbolts. Also, Growlithe is a fire type, and that's a wooden door. Couldn't he have just burnt it down? As James realizes he's not going to be able to get out of the wedding, he yells for Growly, which is weird because as far as he's aware, Growly is still locked in his doghouse. So what made him think Growly would come and help? Also, I'm going to ask the obvious question. When James ran away originally, why didn't he take Growly with him? Growlithe is a great Pokemon, and this one is clearly super loyal to James specifically, so why did he leave it behind? Jessebell reveals that she really doesn't like Growly and thinks he's horrid, which again makes me wonder why in James's absence they didn't just get rid of Growly. After all, they only seem to care about keeping Jessebell happy, so why did they keep around the pet that she doesn't like and that James didn't bother to take with him? Growly rushes James away from another Vileplume Stun Spore, out a window and into his giant doghouse. And within seconds, Jessebell is on top of the roof of the main mansion talking about how she'll follow James to the ends of the earth. Firstly, why did she very obviously run all the way from the basement of the building to the very top floor and onto the roof just to make that remark? Like, who's she trying to look cool for? Secondly, you say you'll follow him to the ends of the earth, but after he ran away the first time, you didn't even go out and search for him. You just waited for him to be tricked into coming back. Sounds a bit lazy, to be honest. Am I the only one who finds it really weird that whilst Team Rocket are discussing how rotten they think Jessebell is, none of them have turned to Ash and Co and asked why the hell they're still there and why they don't mind their own business? I'd have told them to do one. James then talks about how when his and Jessebell's engagement was first announced, she kept trying to change him to make him more refined. But everyone seems to ignore the fact that James can't be any older than 8 years old in this flashback. So his mum and dad not only tried to get him to marry his sister, and no, I'm not letting that go, but they also wanted them to get married when they were still literal children. James's family are psychotic fucking creeps. Pass it on. Also, notice that James in this flashback is running away with Growly, so at what point did they get separated? Surely James would have needed a Pokemon with him to survive on his own, because clearly he didn't have coughing yet. So why did James and Growly part ways at a point where James needed Growly the most? I love when Jessebell yells,
You're not running properly. Let me show you the right way.
as if James is gonna stop and be like, oh, actually, yeah, good point. Show me how to run away properly. I guess she thinks he's as dumb as she is creepy. Jessebell and Vileplume smash a hole through the wall to get into Growly's doghouse, but surely Hopkins would have had a key. How impatient is this woman? Also, are we really supposed to believe that a Vileplume can break a hole in this mansion wall, but a Growlithe can't? Come off it, mate. Direct quote from Jessebell.
Vileplume, stun them to sleep just like before.
Yeah, that's not how Stun Spore works. Stun Spore paralyzes, it doesn't put things to sleep. I guess at this point we can't really call Ash calling Thundershock Electric Shock a WTF moment anymore. He does it all the time. I guess the real WTF moment will be when he actually refers to it as Thundershock. After Growly drives away Jessebell and Vileplume with Flamethrower, James thanks him and tells him he's the best. Take him with you! Take him with you, please! So to answer the question, where did Hopkins and James's parents go, they just stopped giving a shit and went off to feed their Magikarp. These people are what actual psychos look like. I genuinely believe these three people are extremely dangerous. Maybe the police should be called. I guess in cases like this, the police can't really get involved until something actually happens. That's a shame. Jessebell storms past and knocks James's parents and Hopkins into the pond, but her Vileplume gets thrown in as well. But how does that work? It was running behind her. And regardless, why did she abandon her Pokemon like that? With all this abandoning Pokemon, maybe her and James are a good fit. So after Jessebell runs away screaming about how she can't stand Growly, James's mum, who I'm still convinced is Jessebell's mum, comments on how she's too good for James. But never mind that, because look, Hopkins managed to keep that Magikarp food in that bowl after being knocked off the bridge and even submerged in the pond. That man is earning his paycheck. James tells Growly to take good care of his parents because they need him here. In what way did they need Growly there? They had him locked away in his doghouse because Jessebell, the apple of their eye, couldn't stand him. Leaving that poor Growlithe with that family is basically abuse. Take him with you, James. Growly cries as James walks away from him, clearly showing that he does not want to be left in this hellhole with these psychopaths. Read your friend's emotion, James, for God's sake. As Jessie and Meowth walk away thinking James has chosen marriage over Team Rocket, James appears in their hot air balloon, which raises the question, why were Jessie and Meowth walking away without their balloon? Is it insured under James's name or something? Why would they leave behind their only form of transport? Jessie says it looks like they won't get rich this time, and James says he guesses not because they wouldn't give him the inheritance. Mate, after Jessebell ran off, you didn't even ask for your inheritance. When your parents decided you suddenly weren't good enough for Jessebell, they probably would have just given you a lump sum of your inheritance just to bugger off. Always ask. If you don't ask, you'll never know. Is it too late to turn the balloon around? Meanwhile, Ash and Co are being chased by Jessebell, who begs them to help her find James, and Ash says it's usually James that finds them. But why would you tell her that? Now she knows if she hangs around you for long enough, James will probably turn up. You're supposed to be trying to get rid of her. Honestly, these three are lucky this idiot threw a Vileplume away, or they'd be in Stun Spore City right now. I'm still annoyed about that. I don't know why it's bothering me so much. So those are my WTF moments for Pokemon Season 1, Episode 48, Holy Matrimony. That's how it's meant to be said. Let me know your favorites and any that I missed down in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Come over to twitch.tv/AceTrainLiam to hang out in my live streams and use code ACE for money off G Fuel. But until next time, I'm Ace Trainer Liam. Keep on training and have a banging 2021.